True I seen, I believe, is something in which we're all very much conscious of. Because true I seen is really just looking at or seeking other perspectives. We know we have our own perspectives, but I think we also are very mindful that we're not alone. We need other perspectives to enrich our own perspectives, our own ideas. And that also constitutes this collective consciousness. And even though I may have a certain gift, but that certain gift could also use other perspectives. The more perspectives we have, I believe, gives us a better opportunity to meet the challenges, whatever those challenges may come from, nature or from man. Ni nagoli bia masl. Le winyani migamagi. Karwigi uran telewisi geskisoni. My name is Albert Marshall, and I am from the Moose Clan. And I am from Migamagi, but I do reside in a community called Eskisoni here in Cape Breton. Two I seen in my language called Edwaptimug. To fully try to understand what that Edwaptimug means is which probably would translate into English. You're putting these two knowledges together, mainstream and the Aboriginal knowledges. That's all that concept really says. You should do that. You're not saying, my way is the highway. No, I'm just bringing my ways into yours and vice versa. It is not inherent to the Mi'kmaq people, because everybody has two eyes, everybody has imaginations, everybody has different perspectives. Wouldn't it be wonderful though, if we can use that, innovation to constantly look at how things are being done, not necessarily to question the integrity of an action or a phrase, but rather together how can we improve it, how can we fine-tune it, so our efforts are not only going to benefit us while we are here, but most importantly, we can rest assured that our efforts here now, everything that we do is going to benefit the future generations.
About a week after I came to the Mount in 2010, I found a letter in my inbox. That letter was from Sister Dorothy Moore, being my elder. I had never met her, didn't know who she was then, but she welcomed me to the Mount, she wished me well, but she told me how much needed to be done in terms of outreach and service to Indigenous communities and education of Indigenous youth. I started asking for advice, and one of the people I reached out to was another Mi'kmaq elder, Elder Albert Marshall. And to my surprise and delight, he got in his car and drove all the way from Cape Breton, sat right in my office. Well, an hour later, as he was telling me all the things we should be doing, I think he must have seen on my face a sense of being overwhelmed by how much was in front of us in terms of the Mount's responsibility to educate his community members. And then what I saw on his face was a look of disappointment. I realized that in fact, he was kind of handing me a torch, and that I needed to accept it, I needed to seize it, I needed to call on him and many other of his community members for advice and guidance, and we needed to get going. We realized pretty quickly we needed to create welcoming space for our Indigenous students, and so we created the Indigenous Student Center. We also realized we needed to continue to get the wisdom and advice of our Indigenous friends, so we created the ULNU Advisory Council, which continues to advise us to this day. We consulted with the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center and set up programming there on site that has created a bridge, particularly for older adults who want to go back to university. We have gotten approval to have an Indigenous seat on our Senate, and that has been filled for the last 2 years. And that representative is chosen by our Ulnu Advisory Council, which remains quite active in helping shape the Mount's work. And we've seen the Two-Eyed Seeing program over the last, I think, 7 years build, strengthen, expand, and start to not only to continue the programming, successful programming that it's doing, but to have ripple effects out onto campus as other faculty in other disciplines are seeking to understand and build Two-Eyed Seeing into their teaching as well.
The Two-Eyed Seeing program was originally established in approximately about 2016. So what we do is we meld or bring together the concepts from Western scientific perspectives and traditional cultural perspectives rooted in Mi'kmaq and other ways of knowing. And we create these wonderful hands-on activities where students can explore those concepts on their own terms.
One of the things I'm learning very quickly about the program and that I value about it the most is that it's for community by community. We're bringing together elders, we're bringing together youth, we're bringing together teachers, we're bringing together education directors to talk about the program and to talk about the things that they would like to see from the program.
So basically the program's ideas come from the community. So any activities or topics or, areas in their own curriculum they're interested in developing, we take those and we run with them. We think of some ideas, we bring them back, and we work together to develop activities that can then create spaces for youth to engage with both the Western and Indigenous or other ways of knowing and find their own meaning in those activities and in that knowledge.
When we first came on, there was 4 of us, and I have to say for at least the first 3 or 4 meetings, the only thing we talked about is what are we doing? What is this? What does it look like? We're developing programming, but what programming? It took a lot of learning on our end as to what is Two-Eyed Seeing and how do we do it? How do we look together with both eyes at the same time? And how do we bring those teachings to other people? It was a big learning curve for all of us that were a part of the project. I think it was a learning curve for the communities. I think it was a learning curve for academia. And it most certainly was a learning curve for those of us on the ground that were trying to flesh it out and develop what this was.
When we're looking at traditional knowledge, whether it be Mi'kmaq, other forms of Indigenous knowledge, it's important to always ensure that that knowledge is rooted in community, rooted in people who have been entrusted with that knowledge. I often have people come up to me who are, settlers that'll say, I want to, take some of your activities. I would like to take the program activities and use them in my classroom. And the first thing I always say to them is, do you work with people from communities? So do you work with Mi'kmaq people? Specific to, say, for example, the Mi'kmaq activities. And if they say no, I say I wouldn't recommend you use the activities until you form some relationships and you are able to work with individuals that can help you contextualize the information. Because one of the things I think people forget is, learning something is not as simple as like just reading it off a page and being like, oh, I have that knowledge, I own that knowledge now. It's all about context. It's all about your relationship to that knowledge and where it's come from and who shared it.
We don't just go into a community without having that relationship already formed. And through that, you learn about the community and the things that are important to them and the things they want to learn more about.
The main target is youth, grades 7 to 9. This was identified by MK, our community partners, and several others as an age group that wasn't receiving necessarily the same level of programming as, say, high school students or younger students in terms of access to after-school programming surrounding STEM.
Mi'kmaq Gittimadinaway is a group of people that have a passion for education and also a passion for keeping a culture alive. There are 13 schools in the province that fall under MK's care. MK's role is to go out to those communities, find out what their needs are, find out what's working for them, and try to share it with the rest of the communities in the province.
Working in an Indigenous community, we focus a lot on two-eyed seeing and ensuring that we are recognizing the cultural aspects of our children's learning and walking in both the Mi'kmaq traditional world and the Western world. We teach STEM curriculum. I strive in English to integrate technology, math where I can. I've been around the community for a while, so there's been oftentimes some two-eyed seeing camps that are offered in the community through the education department. My actual involvement with two-eyed seeing camps would be the boat building workshop that happened in May in Halifax at the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic. So the boat building workshop consisted of groups of students working collaboratively together to take all of the parts of a Bevan skiff and build a fully functioning boat.
The boat program, it's a whirlwind. It's kind of managed chaos, and it's wonderful. I think that's what's part of the magic. So on the first day, you've got a very, very tight deadline, which is to build the hull of the boat. The second day is always my favorite day because that's the point where the participants, they recognize that they've got enough of the core skills to complete the boat without your input. So they very politely tell you to get lost. And I always enjoy that the most because that way you can say to yourself, we've taught these kids something. Like they now own the program, they own the boat, and they're that invested in this project. And then the third day is always a really joyous day. The third day is you're just finishing off the boat, putting in the seats, the rub rails, and just doing that final polish on the boat. And it always culminates with the great presentation of certificates, some speeches, and then the big thing is the proof of concept, where you launch the boat and everybody just kind of celebrates the fact that they've taken this pile of wood on the first day and they've turned it into a floating boat on the third day.
It was really an eye-opener to see our youth actually do the boats and make them from hand, and it was really awesome. I liked it. First Nation kids just learn everything hands-on. It's more showing them their culture instead of giving them a textbook.
The workshop Alan Syllaboy did with these young people, where they were actually discussed the significance of petroglyphs and then drew them on the side of the hull, really added like another very deep layer of cultural understanding to this program.
Well, painting boats and kids, they really go together. Our Mi'kmaq culture, had so much loss in population, and information went with those people too. So any bit of information, like a visual one for me as an artist, is so important. It's so important. That identifies us as Mi'kmaq, and it's unique to us. And so that's why I spent my whole life trying to make images that will teach about our own art or who we are. I noticed, when I'm doing a workshop with kids now, they all have phones and they can look up petroglyph and see them, and there's information about them. So that's absolutely, something that was never, that didn't exist when I started out. But I'm so glad because everybody can learn about them instantaneously and utilize them the way they should be.
The workshop, it was absolutely magical. It just solidified what we're trying to do at MK in saving the culture and the language through the language, but also through their cultural activities. There's so many different ways that the students can contribute to the project. Maybe they're really interested in the wood itself. Maybe they're interested in how to make it work, the carpentry side of it, or maybe they're interested in fishing, and this is a way for them to get out on the water. Maybe they're interested in the language itself, and they like to hear the Mi'kmaq language being spoken and like the terms being used.
It was fun to have like those activities going on and all that. It really has helped me with the experience in the world, and I hope it would help me when I get older with jobs that I would like to do.
That workshop was just a really great way for students to see that step by step you can take individual pieces and come together and make a whole. and make something that can be used and something that can be valuable and that they've had a role in building.
There's so many different elements that can be pulled out of those activities that can just spark something in a student, and if they don't have those opportunities, they'll never know.
We launched the boats off the CSS Acadia at the end of the program in May. After that, we took them to Aboriginal Day in Keji-Makujik. Taking the boats down to Keji and launching them on that day was incredibly powerful. The one thing that I'll always remember about how powerful it was when, as we approached the petroglyphs from the waterside, rowing with these youth, they were being drummed alongside by First Nations drummers who were encouraging us and compelling us to kind of move faster and faster towards the petroglyphs. And the kids that I was with in the boats, you could tell that it was having an impact on them. You could see on their faces that this was something that was really powerful. After Keji-Makujik, we took the boats to Mount St. Vincent University to their art gallery, and they were on display there for a number of months.
The boats kind of showed up quickly in our lives here at the gallery, and one day a truck was backed up by a man with a bunch of boats in the back, and they were still wet, and they still had sand in them from Lake Keji-Makujik, and they were a lot bigger than I thought they'd be. I deal with space a lot, and from the minute they've been here, they've taken up that space physically, but I think also sort of metaphorically. A lot of people aren't aware they're here because of sort of the impromptu nature of how they came. So people will often come into our lower gallery where I'm standing, and they'll immediately see them and they go to them, get near them, touch them, and immediately start telling stories. They feel not like a talking stick, but they feel like a relic in a way that makes people open up. It seems like a real confluence of whatever people bring, the boats seem to be able to carry that for them. It's been very exciting to have them here, and it's also made me want to do a lot more. The two-eyed seeing that Albert and Mardina Marshall kind of coined, that it's really, I see it working here where we are, I think, sort of on one side of that dynamic, and we've been able to hopefully open our eyes as an institution a bit more to what that could be for us.
Relationships are the key to education. A student doesn't learn from people they don't like. And so one of the key things that we focus on in our school is building relationships with the students, getting to know them on more than just a surface level. And when you're looking at Indigenous students, you're looking at people who come to you with intergenerational trauma, things that you might not be aware of. So you really have to work at building a relationship, building respect, and building a bridge between you and them, and having them understand that you really do care about them and you care about their learning and them as a person.
You can have an immediate bond with a young person, and that bond can be based around a simple thing like a piece of wood and a plane. And over the past few days, I've had a number of young people come into the shop, and I've given them this lovely 14-inch bench plane, and I've given them a 6-foot-long piece of pine, and they've been able to rip off these wonderful curls. And that experience for that young person, it's an experience that they've never really had before. And you could tell that it does make an impact on them, and it gives you a connection with them. When you have that experience, both of you can kind of talk about the potential of this. You've learned this little skill, now what can you do?
And that's our goal as educators, is to spark things in them that are going to resonate. And not every lesson, not every activity does that. But when you hit those activities and they continue to have conversations and they continue to feel that pride in themselves, it really is an educator's goal. That's what we want. We want to create those positive experiences with learning.
And it's not easy, but when you're motivated by youth and the future generation and fostering a relationship within community, and you come at it with a pure heart and pure intentions, the community most of the time will guide you through, and mistakes will be made, and that's okay. And to just be learning from one another all of the time is what's important.
We can look upon knowledge as being alive. Sometimes when you share that knowledge, it might not manifest right away or germinate because the spirit of that knowledge has not impacted that host. It's not a cop-out either, but we all have to become knowledge gardeners, planting these seeds into these ideas into these young minds. And I'm sure they will ponder that idea or that knowledge until they are ready to act on it.
We don't learn if we don't have relationships with the people who are teaching us, the environments we're learning in, and the content we're learning. What I love about this program is it gives us the time and space to actually engage with education in the way I would argue it should be. Elder Albert often speaks of growing forward, co-learning. He calls it knowledge gardening. Those terminologies, they really capture what the program's all about and why it exists.
Greater society as a whole can benefit from the knowledge that's been gained from engaging in this and working with it. Ideas are great. Putting them into practice is vitally important. Without those pieces, without being able to show people what it looks like, it's just an idea. We need to share this with other schools. We need to teach other people how to do this and how to mingle both worlds so that we all benefit from that. It can't stay here. It's got to grow. We've got to share it, and it can be transformative.
So collectively, we remind ourselves by saying, Nasko goiko, nishiedesno. Divided, we will fall. Mawu goiko, mulgignadesno. United, we will be strong. And I think this is what our ancestors made sure, that they maintained a unity, because if you see yourself as just a small part and parcel of this wonderful creation, no matter what you do, you're not ultimately going to make a difference. Again, collectively though, we will make a difference, negatively or positively. And hopefully it will be positive.